WPLG Miami, Fort Lauderdale. From Channel 10, this is Eyewitness News at 11. South Florida's #1 late news with Ann Bishop, Dwight Lauderdale, meteorologist Dawn Noel, Jerry Azar's sports, and the Channel 10 Eyewitness News team.
Good evening. Philip Tiger is fighting for his life tonight in North Broward Hospital. If he lives, he will stand trial for first-degree murder.
Police say he killed his wife and he tried to kill himself. With the latest information, Eyewitness News reporter Linda Patillo, who joins us live from the hospital. Linda?
Ann and Dwight, a Broward Sheriff's deputy is standing guard tonight outside Philip Tiger's room at North Broward Hospital. Tiger, who is 76 years old, was formally charged this evening with first-degree murder in connection with the stabbing death of his 71-year-old wife, Ruth Tiger. The big question for police and everyone who knew the couple is, why did this tragedy happen? Police found Tiger in his apartment, stabbed in the chest, semi-conscious, next to his dead wife. She had been stabbed several times in the abdomen and her wrist slit. Neighbors say the couple had become increasingly despondent after learning Ruth Tiger had a diabetes and thyroid problem. Police say a note found in the apartment from Philip Tiger addressed to their children asked them not to consider this a cowardly act, but something their mother wanted.
We believe it's a murder and attempt suicide case at this time. Due to the evidence that we found at the scene, the note, the injuries to the Mrs. Tiger, the injuries to Mr. Tiger, and to statements made by witnesses in the case.
Police will not comment on whether this can be considered a mercy killing, but neighbors have been quick to point out the similarities between this case and that of convicted mercy killer Roswell Gilbert.
We didn't need any quarrels or never talked about it. There's no problem. But when she got sick, she was so sick that he could not just take it.
To the state attorney this afternoon, the state attorney gave them the go-ahead to charge Philip Tiger with murder. This case has the potential to reopen many of the same questions that appeared in the Roswell Gilbert case. Ann and Dwight?
Thank you, Linda. Eyewitness News reporter Linda Patillo, live from North Broward. Ann?
Anti-abortionists call that Operation Murder, and a coalition of groups is working toward a moratorium in September when Pope John Paul II will be in the United States. As Eyewitness News reporter Jerry Helfman tells us, Miami is one of the 8 target cities. Here's Jerry on the Night Beat in Miami.
When Pope John Paul II visits Miami this fall, some pro-life activists will not be on hand for his message. Instead, they'll be taking the Pope's pro-life views to abortion clinics. A group called the Pro-Life Nonviolent Action Project has written letters to all of Miami's clinics asking them not to perform abortions during the Pope's 2-day visit. John Kavanaugh O'Keefe wrote the letter and threatens to form human blockades around clinics that don't comply.
If they are determined to move ahead with their schedule of killing, we will kneel down in front of the doors and block access to those clinics.
Maddie Bloom is the administrator of Planned Parenthood. She says she respects the rights of people to peacefully assemble, but that pro-choice groups have rights too.
We fully intend to exercise our right, which is constitutionally protected by the First Amendment, to remain open and provide services to those women who, in fact, choose abortion as an option to terminate an unintended pregnancy.
The Catholic Archdiocese of Miami, which is sponsoring the Pope's visit, says it has no plans to aid the abortion ban effort.
Is that in line with the Catholic Church's thinking? Picketing abortion clinics is not. You know, we have never made that the focus of our pro-life efforts.
The pro-life people planning the protest claim to have a large coalition of support, but pro-choice groups promise police intervention if there is any action that makes a woman's constitutional right of choice unavailable. In Miami, Jerry Helfman, Channel 10 Eyewitness News on the Night Beat.
It's a scam that affected thousands of women, and tonight 6 Floridians indicted for flooding the country with phony birth control pills.
Eyewitness News reporter John Scott's been tracking down the story and joins us with all the details from our newsroom. John?
And it is a case that panicked thousands of women back in 1984, and government investigators claim it all traces back to South Florida. 2 of the suspects are under arrest tonight. 4 others remain on the loose. The first 2 arrested are 49-year-old Furman Alonzo of Fort Lauderdale and 42-year-old Beatriz Villalone of Miami. According to a federal indictment just unsealed, Alonzo and Villalone were part of a ring that imported and distributed more than 1 million counterfeit birth control pills, imitations of the legitimate brand Ovulin 21, made by the G.D. Searle Company. The indictment alleges Alonso and Villalon imported and distributed the fakes from Spain, and that they manufactured still more fakes in Guatemala, then brought them to the United States for distribution. Pharmacists discovered they were dispensing the phony pills to women in 1984. That triggered a health scare and a nationwide recall of the pills. The attorney representing Alonso and Villalon says his clients did not know the pills they were handling were fakes.
It's kind of, I analogize it to a gas station attendant who gasses a car up, not knowing whether the car is stolen or whether a drug dealer owns that car. He simply is there to provide a service. My clients only provided a service of putting buyers together with sellers, and in this particular instance didn't even inspect the merchandise, which is very common in this type of field.
The Food and Drug Administration says there's no evidence of any women getting sick from taking the phony pills, even though the chemical formula was wrong for the Guatemalan variety. There also are no reports of any unexpected pregnancies resulting from the fakes. Rosenblatt says his clients remain in jail until a bond hearing. If convicted, they face 74-year federal prison terms. But he doesn't believe the government has a case.
And frankly, I think the government's going to be very embarrassed to present this case in court.
The 4 people who are also indicted but as yet not arrested: Edward John Peterson of Miami, Sheldon Harwin of Hollywood, Jacques Bahar of Miami, and Gilberto Urubi of Miami. Ann and Dwight?
Thank you, John, for that report. Dwight?
Tonight, the head of the state HRS promising more changes at the agency. Gregory Kohler on the job less than 3 weeks, getting rid of South Florida's 2 top administrators, Linda Berkowitz in Dade and Monroe, and John Stokesbury in Broward. Kohler claims both failed to protect those under HRS care who cannot protect themselves. He says Berkowitz and Stokesbury were political appointees of former Governor Bob Graham and should have expected the Martinez administration to make changes.
We've got a lot of work ahead of us to do. Governor Martinez feels that HRS can work better. He made it very clear to me when he hired me that he wanted me to bring about change in the department, and he wasn't interested in waiting a long time for it to happen.
Kohler says other changes might call for reducing administrator salaries while increasing pay for investigators. An HRS worker in South Broward resigning his job amid allegations of sexual child abuse. William Clark, who was in charge of children's programs, has not been formally charged, but has been under investigation for allegedly assaulting a 7-year-old girl he was babysitting at his home. A Detroit woman who killed her 18-month-old baby was found innocent today because the court has ruled she was insane at the time of the murder. 28-year-old Carol Washington suffocating her daughter during a cruise on board the Emerald Seas liner. Psychiatrists testified Washington suffered delusions. Someone was after her and her baby. She will be confined to a hospital for full evaluation.
A terrible train crash in Brazil, killing 41, injuring 155, and it's feared the death toll will rise. 2 commuter trains collided just outside Sao Paulo, not head-on but diagonally, just as one train was switching to another track. Many are trapped inside the wrecked cars, and heavy rains are hampering rescue efforts. Officials still trying to figure out how it happened. What could have been a much more serious accident snarled going-home commuters in New York City tonight when 2 subway trains sideswiped each other on the Grand Concourse in the Bronx. One train knocked off the tracks. All trains were stopped. No one was killed, but about 20 people were hurt in the accident. Investigators still trying to find out how that happened. An explosive fire in Fort Lauderdale tonight has put 17 residents of a rooming house out on the street. A tenant said his television set exploded, touching off a fire. Residents at Northwest 5th Avenue and 2nd Street tried to put it out, waiting at least 10 minutes to call firefighters. When they arrived, 2 rooms were gutted, 10 others damaged. There's no electricity, and the building is not safe tonight for the residents.
Safety in the skies, the aim of a government crackdown on commercial and private pilots with drug problems. The Transportation Department planning to coordinate FAA pilot medical certificates, FBI files, and highway traffic records to find pilots who have had drug or alcohol convictions. The Airline Pilots Union says it reserves comment on the plan, which probably will not become final for 6 months to a year. It'll be at least 2 months before accused cocaine kingpin Carlos Lader goes on trial. A hearing in Jacksonville today to determine who will represent Lader. He has a court-appointed lawyer, but is trying to arrange for a private attorney. The new trial date is April 20th. They're accused of running guns for drugs, an underground network that flew weapons to Contra rebels and brought drugs back into this country. Tonight, in part 2 of her Eyewitness News Extra, Guns for Drugs, the Costa Rican connection, I-Team reporter Susan Candiotti says there's a Cuban-American connection.
When it comes to backing the Contras, no one does it with as much enthusiasm as Miami's Cuban-American community.
The Cuban-American community has been of immense help to us. We are very grateful to them.
In fact, their alignment with Nicaraguan rebels goes well beyond symbolism. They stage fundraisers like this radio marathon. Doctors travel south to treat the wounded at makeshift hospitals. They train Contras at camps in Miami. And just last year, the Bay of Pigs Veterans Organization, Brigade 2506, made official its long-standing affiliation with the Contras Southern Front in Costa Rica. The brigade has even sent soldiers to the front line.
More than 10 and less than 50.
The efforts have not gone unnoticed by President Reagan, who has identified with the Contras struggle to the point of once saying,
"So it makes me a Contra, too."
Jose Cotin is a former Miami gun shop owner in jail awaiting trial on illegal weapons charges. He co-founded another Cuban-American organization that also supports the Contras. He was the Miami contact for Tom Posey's CMA, an Alabama-based mercenary group directly involved in the Contra struggle.
Our goal was to have a Cuban army, a Cuban representation in the war.
But the Contra's Northern Army Chief, FDN Director Adolfo Calero, turned down his offer of soldiers, preferring only Nicaraguans among his troops.
They didn't want our physical participation in the war. All they want is supplies.
Cotin, a gun dealer with international connections, says he never sent guns from U.S. territory, but he does admit he was negotiating a gun deal for the Contras days before he was arrested.
We had only ordered about, there were 20 AK-47s and 20 AR-15s. The people that would purchase them, then they were going to go to Central America. We had intention of buying an airplane, and they would probably leave on an airplane.
Unlike Brigade 2506, Cotin did not want to align his group with the Contras Southern Front. The reason, its leaders and drugs. He names Rene Corvo, the brigade's official delegate to the region, Felipe Vidal, and others.
That's why I didn't want to participate. When you are in a political movement, a drug, participating with drugs will discredit the movement.
According to investigators for a Senate Select Committee, both Rene Corvo and Felipe Vidal have been in charge of the Guns for Drugs refueling operation at airstrips on northern Costa Rican farms under the supervision of CIA-linked American rancher John Hull.
We have an alliance with a guy named by the name of Frank Chanes.
Chanes is the owner of Ocean Hunter Inc. in Miami. Participants say he stored guns in his home that were sent to the Contras.
Named Francisco Chanes had with a guy by the name, last name is Nunez. Was some kind of in some shrimp business. It was claimed that some drugs were shipped out from Costa Rica in containers with shrimps to Miami, and also in private planes.
Cotin says Chanes gave Corvo large amounts of money for the Contras. Corvo has not been available for comment.
I think it was just like a cover front.
Ocean Hunter's partner in Costa Rica is Moises Nunez. Government sources say DEA is looking at Chanes, Nunez, and their businesses, but the Federal Drug Administration refuses any comment. Their shrimp business, called Frigoríficos de Punta Arenas, is named in an internal General Accounting Office report as having received approximately $238,000 from the State Department's National Humanitarian Assistance Office. NHAO's former director, Ambassador Robert Dumling, citing security reasons, refuses to say why a shrimp business was getting humanitarian aid earmarked for the Contras. Corvo's associate, Felipe Vidal, a man with a record of drug charges in Miami, was the man who chose Frigoríficos' Miami bank account for the funneling of NHAO funds destined to a group of Southern Front rebels. NSC consultant Rob Owen, who used to work for NHAO, supervised this group's account, according to government sources. He was the one who reportedly put Vidal in charge of their funding. Earlier, Owen had been Oliver North's liaison to the Contras. Brigade 2506 Director Perez Franco says his organization is not involved in drugs.
This is against the law, this is against our principles, and we are against that.
However, even Secretary of State George Shultz has acknowledged the problem exists.
I believe whatever problem there is quite under control.
Tomorrow, a drug kingpin and his pilot talk about their Guns for Drugs missions in the Contra Supply Network. For the Night Team Report, Susan Candiotti, Channel 10 Eyewitness News.
The Iran-Contra affair, the focus of a confirmation hearing on Capitol Hill. Members of the Senate Intelligence Committee grilling the man Mr. Reagan nominated to head the CIA. Robert Gates told lawmakers the agency's involvement in the arms operation is something he's determined not to repeat. Despite some controversy over his nomination, Gates is expected to be approved by the panel. Israel's role in the arms deal also discussed in Washington when Secretary of State George Shultz met with Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. He arrived in D.C. today for 3 days of talks with officials. White House spokesman trying to downplay Israel's role in the affair, saying Shamir is in the United States to discuss peace initiatives in the Mideast.
Tonight, Shamir's government accused of staging a show trial against alleged Nazi war criminal John Demjanjuk. Attorneys for the former U.S. automaker say it's a case of mistaken identity. He's accused of being the infamous Ivan the Terrible and forcing thousands of Jews to gas chambers at the Treblinka death camp. Word tonight from Moscow that Jewish activist Joseph Begun may soon be freed from prison. The Soviet government says Begun and 2 more dissidents will be released perhaps as early as tomorrow. If they are released, observers say it would be in line with Kremlin actions to free dissidents whose imprisonment stands in the way of better Soviet relations with the West.
Soviet criticism of the ABC miniseries America Isn't Letting Up. A Soviet diplomat in Washington calling it one of the most unfortunate products of the Cold War. Oleg Benyuk also says it is poisoning the minds of millions of Americans. The Greater Miami chapter of the United Nations Association also has harsh words for that miniseries. The group says it asked ABC to take out all references to the United Nations. In America, some of the occupying troops appear to be with the organization. Officials say that show portrays the United Nations and its troops in an unfair and inaccurate manner.
A man credited with helping to rebuild America's military leaving his post. Navy Secretary John Lehman making his resignation formal today. In a letter to the outgoing secretary, President Reagan thanked him for revitalizing the Navy. Sources say he'll be replaced by one of his deputies, James Webb. Webb is also an author. He wrote the bestseller about the Vietnam War called Fields of Fire.
Still ahead, Uncle Sam says the chicken you ate for dinner could be dangerous.
And a little South Florida boy closer to a life-saving operation. Eyewitness News will be right back. A warning about tainted chicken tops tonight's Health Beat segment. The Agriculture Department says thousands, perhaps millions of Americans become ill each year by eating poultry contaminated by salmonella. It believes 4 out of every 10 birds sold are infected. A health official says changes must be made to restore the public's confidence in the nation's poultry supply. A very serious health crisis in Broward. Officials say venereal disease cases are up 27% from last year, and a penicillin-resistant strain of VD is up 65%. The reason is increased sex between drug abusers. Health officials say those infected are not seeking out proper treatment.
A young South Florida boy who needs a liver transplant, hoping to get the help he needs in Pittsburgh. Ronnie DeSille is arriving in that city late this afternoon for tests that'll determine if he is suitable for a transplant. This past week, thousands of people donated money to cover the 7-year-old's medical expenses, including a check and words of encouragement from President Reagan.
Still to come, the Hurricanes baseball team trying to get back on the winning track.
And a battle between 2 of the best in high school basketball. Jerry Sports next on Eyewitness News. Time for sports with Jerry Azar, high school basketball.
You got number 1 going against number 3. Great basketball game. One of them with a disadvantage, though. Okay. Okay, since you asked, here is the story tonight at Sunblazer Arena. High school battle between number 1 ranked Hialeah Miami Lakes and number 3 Miami High. The Sting still playing without Cesar Portillo. Let's hit the highlights. Cesar still on the bench from a dizzy spell. He could be back next week. That is Chris Corsiani. He had 4 fouls at half, held him down tonight. He only had 12 points. Another great guard, Jose Ramos, brings it up, takes the jumper. Shot is good. Lakes decides to go inside to their big man, Sean Bird, the pump and the score. This was a close, low-scoring game. Corsiani comes in, feeds Rui Glass for the bucket. HML avenges an earlier loss. They beat Miami High 46-45. They are now 26-3 on the year. NBA tonight, 2 of the better players in pro basketball, Isaiah Thomas of the Detroit Pistons and Dominique Wilkins of the Atlanta Hawks, went at it at the Omni in Atlanta. Here is Dominique as he soars and scores. He had a game-high 35. Not to be outdone. Isaiah Thomas with a playground move, comes up, pumps, shoots, and scores. He had 23. But Wilkins got the best of it. Comes in. The jump shot is good. Hawks a winner, 107-103. Now, I got some good news, and I got some bad news. Good news, Miami's baseball players are hitting the ball hard. Bad news, they are hitting it right at the defense. The worst news, they lost to Tampa tonight. Here is the scores. We checked the scoreboard. Canes lose it 5-1. They are now 1-5 on the season. One other baseball score. FIU a winner tonight, 15-5 over Niagara. Now, Don Mattingly, first baseman of the New York Yankees, won his arbitration case. What? Quite a shock. How could he lose? His 86 numbers, he batted .352, 31 home runs, 113 RBIs, led the league in slugging percentage, and because of that, he gets the most green ever awarded in arbitration, $1.97 million for 87. And tonight at the UM baseball game, I asked Los Angeles Dodger manager Tommy Lasorda about Mattingly and the money.
Ball player. And that's what makes arbitration great for the players, is the fact that they can go in there, and if the man rules in their favor, that's what they get. Mattingly is, to me, in my opinion, one of the best baseball players in the major leagues. And if some of those other guys are making $1.3 million or $1.4 million, he's worth that.
We'll have more with Lasorda tomorrow at 5:30 right here on Eyewitness News. If you were starting up a pro football team, I think you'd like to have two of the guys who picked up awards in Philadelphia tonight. Could you use Vinny Testaverde and Lawrence Taylor? Vinny was there, along with Coach Jimmy Johnson. Vinny, Player of the Year in college football. Also on hand was Paul Palmer, the running back at Temple, runner-up for the Heisman to Vinny. Eagle quarterback Ron Jaworski, and LT. Lawrence Taylor picked as the NFL MVP. Taylor, like Vinny, has won every individual award, plus he won the Super Bowl. First round results from the Virginia Slims tennis tourney at the Polo Club in Boca Raton. Winners include Chris Everett Lloyd. She won tonight over Elna Reinach, 6-4, 6-2, and Mary Jo Fernandez defeated Elizabeth Smiley, 6-3, 6-3. Pam Cassells also was a winner. Play continues tomorrow, starting at 9. Back to Dwight.
Thank you, Jerry. Coming up, some rain in the Gulf, and it's heading our way.
Don's forecast next on Eyewitness News. A man synonymous with hurricane forecasting in our community could be leaving town. Word, a Houston television station is offering Dr. Neil Frank a position as weatherman and chief science reporter. Frank's been at the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables since '59. He's still not confirmed whether he's leaving Miami for Texas.
Hurricane season wouldn't be the same without him.
It just wouldn't, but if he goes, now he'll find out what the other side is.
That's true. We're getting some rain, huh?
Yeah, we are going to get some rain. It looks like it's going to come tomorrow. Let's take a look outside, if we will. The barometric pressure is 29.91 and holding steady at the moment. Humidity is 81%. We have a wind out of the east at 7. The last served temperature is 71. There's the sunrise and sunset time for tomorrow. The 11 o'clock temperatures in Miami and around South Florida, 72, 71 on the beach, 74 Lauderdale, and 69 in West Kendall. The highest out of Miami was 82, but that was not the warmest in the nation. It was about 10 miles north of here. We'll show you where in a second. 66 the low today. A year ago, 81 and 62, and there we see the records, 85 and 42. Across the country, two high-pressure areas, one to the north, the other one down to the south over Texas, and two low-pressure systems connected by a trough. First low causing havoc over parts of the east today with snow widespread. 3 to 5 inches of snow generally will fall tonight from about Indiana over through Virginia. Meanwhile, showers down in the Gulf are developing in anticipation of another low-pressure area forming over there. Snow is also light but widespread across much of the northern Rockies. All right, here's a look at the southeast and what's going on. It's kind of hard to figure out, but this is as close as I can determine what tomorrow will look like. A low-pressure area in the Gulf will continue to bring moisture at us because the southwest wind aloft is continuing in that direction. So we're forecasting some showers tomorrow. We're forecasting clouds, and maybe the whole thing will clear out by about Thursday afternoon. The coldest in the country, Messina, New York, 19 below, and there, the North Dade Water Plant. North Dade County had 84, the warmest in the 48 adjacent states today. Across the country, we find 20s across the northern part of New England into northern New York, and all the rest of the temperatures 30s and low 40s this afternoon. Meanwhile, across the southern half of the country, a lot of temperatures were in the 30s and 40s, cold air up there, with Florida having temperatures ranging about 35 degrees from top to bottom. Across the central part of the country, 20s, 30s, and a little band of 20s where it was snowing today across Missouri and Illinois, Indiana. Like I said, they're going to have 2 or 3 inches of snow by tomorrow morning. 50s, a little area of that up in Montana, 60s and 70s in the southwest with Los Angeles 72 and Phoenix at 70. Across the state of Florida, be surprised to find how cool it was in northern Florida today. Jacksonville, a high of only 51 degrees today compared to our temperatures in the upper 70s and low 80s down here. On the satellite photograph, we have a series for you. I want you to watch carefully going back 12 hours. Here's Florida, nothing going on at about 11 o'clock this morning, but watch all these clouds, and now the last couple of hours you can start to see some white clouds and hear some thunderstorms building up off the Yucatan, and you can see the flow generally coming our way, so it looks like we're going to see an increase in cloud cover here overnight, and tomorrow it probably will rain in the afternoon. With that in mind, let's look at our forecast. If you're boating tomorrow, the wind will be east to southeast at 10 knots, the sea at 2 to 4 feet, Baywater light to moderate chop, the high tide at 10:53 in the morning at Government Cut, and the low tide will be at 4:50 p.m. Tonight's overnight low will be 68 degrees under skies that will increase in clouds probably well after midnight tonight, but the clouds are coming. Tomorrow, look for a mostly cloudy day, and showers are possible, if not likely, by later tomorrow in the afternoon. The high temperature is 78. Now, Thursday and Friday, I've got partly sunny and cooler. It may take until noon on Thursday to clear out, but the weekend definitely looking up at this point. That's our forecast tonight. Ann?
Thank you, Don. Coming up, Mark Schaefer getting in touch with nature.
We're going in search of the perfect butterfly next on Eyewitness News.
Fort Lauderdale is known worldwide for spring break, the beautiful beach, and it's often called the Venice of America. But did you know it is almost the only place in our country where they breed butterflies? Honestly, it's tonight's Schaefer Caper.
I found it hard to believe myself. A butterfly farm in Fort Lauderdale. A company called Metascience raises 50,000 butterflies a year in a big screened-in porch behind its laboratory. Yes. They send the butterflies to universities, zoos, even butterfly houses in England, kind of aviary-like attractions. There are over 30 different kinds of butterflies in here with all the leaves and flower nectar a butterfly could imagine. So if all their needs met, these butterflies don't have much else to think about than falling in love. This is the butterfly equivalent of a singles bar. They spend a night or two here, and presto, the leaves are alive with the sound of caterpillars. But time is of the essence. A butterfly is a butterfly for only 1 week.
Short lifespan.
Isn't it terribly frustrating?
Yes, it is. Well, it makes for a good market, though.
Ron Boonder runs Metascience, says he used to own an electronics firm till his butterfly hobby took over. The screened patio at his house is filled with butterflies. He says anyone can do this if you have the right flowers and plants, and, I'd add, a certain steely nature. You have to put up with caterpillars before you can get butterflies. All this might become simpler in the fall if Ron has his way. Trade Winds Park in Coconut Creek will have its own butterfly house, where anyone can get up close and personal with butterfly wings. Mark Schaefer, Channel 10 Eyewitness News.
Aren't they beautiful?
Pretty butterflies. That does it for us. ABC's Nightline is next.
For Dwight, Don, Jerry, the rest of the Eyewitness News team, you have a good night. Remember, we'll be looking for you again tomorrow.